For this edition of our Skift podcast, we will feature discussion from our recent Design the Future online event. To join us and learn more about future Skift events, visit forum.skift.com to sign up and stay in the know about our future summits, forums, and special events.
For our next session, we'll be taking a look at how diversity fuels creativity and innovation with Aaron Walton, founder and CEO of Walton Isaacson, in discussion with journalist and author Robert Rosenthal. Before we welcome Aaron and Rob to the stage, let's take a quick look at some of Aaron's work in action to set the scene.
Lexus is making their most thrilling cars ever, but somehow, people still see the brand as boring. We needed to change that by doing something truly exciting to connect with a new, younger audience. Like partner with Marvel Studios' groundbreaking Black Panther film 2 years before its debut with a never-been-done-before content-generating experience. Exciting. We kicked it off by working with Deadpool creator Fabian Nicieza on an 8-part graphic novel, which Lexus launched at their exclusive first-ever Comic-Con concert with the Black Eyed Peas. Social media was lit. Fandom intensified when we had West Coast Customs create a one-of-a-kind Black Panther Lexus just in time for auto show season. And then we sponsored the Black Comic Book Festival. Excitement kept growing as we debuted Wakandan-inspired fashion from 10 up-and-coming designers at New York Fashion Week. Our influencer network spread the word every step of the way, creating anticipation for our next big moment, the launch of the new Lexus flagship on the Super Bowl.
Vibranium secured.
Which was ranked one of the best commercials of the game, was the most watched Lexus commercial ever, and gave us a 1,080% lift in search at prominent auto sites. This unprecedented effort shattered all expectations, with over 56 million organic social media impressions, over 5 billion earned media impressions, and a 269% lift in Lexus LS sales, proving that when you think beyond product placement and engage culture in an authentic way, the result is anything but boring.
Well, how you like that? Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I will tell you that our guest is the brains behind incorporating Lexus into the Black Panther movie franchise. He's the founder and driving force behind Walton Isaacson, the premier multicultural marketing communications agency in America, with clients such as Lexus, as you've seen, and McDonald's. You might also be familiar with one of his partners in the business, Irvin Johnson, otherwise known as Magic. And when he's not running the agency, which, I mean, he's doing that 24/7, 365, but on the odd time that he takes a break, he can be found on runways in Paris and Milan, modeling the fashions of Japanese designer Rien Shu, making him literally the model businessman. There's no one more equipped to talk about the power of diversity. So on behalf of Skift, I am delighted to introduce you to Aaron Walton. Hello, Aaron.
Hello. Thank you for that incredible introduction. Very generous. Thank you, Rob.
Well, not generous, honest, true. Okay, so let's jump right to it in the time that we have. Our topic today is diversity. How it fuels creativity and innovation, whether it's in advertising, in the workplace, in the marketplace, everywhere. What does it mean? What does that mean to you?
So here's what diversity means to me. It really means harnessing the power of disruption, right? Because differences are disruptive. And that's the key to innovation, disrupting the status quo or the predictable. And when we have moments of disruption, it kind of breaks those patterns that often lead to blind spots. And so what it really means for me is really being disruptive. At our agency, we don't refer to D&I in the traditional sense of diversity and inclusion. We think of it as disruption and innovation. And that's kind of ultimately the power that it has. What does it
look like when it's working?
Well, it looks and sounds messy, if I'm going to be honest with you. On the surface, it looks, racially diverse, like a full spectrum of skin colors, hairstyles, clothing choices, cultural cues. The eye should actually be able to see diversity. But just as important, or probably even more important, is how it sounds, right? The ear should be able to pick up diversity because conversations should be colliding with different points of view, different life experiences, different ways of looking and solving problems. So the sound of diversity is the sound of like, how do I say? It's a sound of the status quo kind of smashing into pieces and then rearranging them into something that no one had come up with before. When I talk about it, I often use the analogy of a kaleidoscope, right? When you look at a kaleidoscope, there are these beautiful individual shapes and colors, and on its own, each of those could be beautiful. It is beautiful, but when you kind of turn it and twist it, you create something even more dynamic and more kind of graphic and just more engaging. And so for me, it's really about those collisions and how it can help move things forward.
And how and why is that particularly important in a creative business?
That's a great question. Look, you've done stand-up, right?
Yeah.
So often that the first jokes that you discover, not necessarily, well, they're likely to be the same jokes as another comic will discover. And the obvious always comes first, whether it's in comedy or any creative, expression. But breakthrough creativity, that's way down there. It has to be kind of excavated and shaped and molded and twisted. And when you do that, in a creative business, it will survive. It will thrive by having that kind of competitive edge, by discovering those gems, those moments of innovation that no one else ever saw. We can all basically create. We can all play the game, but innovation, game changing. That's what happens when you understand, how to activate diversity. And by the way, it has an impact on the bottom line, right? McKinsey did a study, and they showed that, gender diverse companies were 15% more likely to outperform their competitors. And they found that, ethnically diverse companies were likely to outperform the companies by 35%.
Right.
So it does have a huge, huge impact on the bottom line. Harvard Business Review did a study too. They showed that leaders who give diverse voices, equal airtime, are 2.5 times more likely to unleash value-driving insights. And when they create this kind of speak up culture, they found that the employees are 3.5 times more likely to unleash their full innovative potential. So it really does play a role in creativity. It plays a role in how people feel, and it plays a role in the profitability of a company.
Yes, I was going to ask you about it, and that's it. It's empirical data that suggests both, not even suggests, but actually proves out that both creativity and diversity are a competitive advantage, provide competitive advantage. So let's segue into travel, since the audience here is in the travel industry. One would think, Aaron, that diversity is kind of inherent in a global business that's essentially about experiencing, different cultures.
Yeah.
So as someone who has, traveled extensively yourself, do you see sufficient diversity reflected in the industry's approach?
Here's what I would say. One of the great joys of travel is to change the view and to experience something new to you, right? But that can't fully happen if you don't have a different lens. And that's not a camera lens I'm talking about. It's you, it's your eyes, it's your brain. You need to open up to how you perceive the world around you and not judge it, just absorb it. Travel's all about storytelling. But who's telling the stories, and what stories are they telling? Without diversity, travelers keep seeing the same history that reflects, dominant cultures, but there are infinite numbers of stories to be told, sights to be seen. It's why we're, seeing statues being torn down around the world. People are tired of the same old narratives told by the same old storytellers. So, I do think that there is a place and an important place for that diversity, an important role that diversity plays in the travel industry.
Do you see some opportunities in travel?
Oh, I mean, 100%. From the way travel is experienced to, and are marketed, to the way trips are experienced once the traveler arrives. For example, I'm a Black gay man, and I want to know that my travel experience is going to be relevant and respectful to my values. But I also know it's not just about, matching my identity for my sake. I can't tell you, how many allies, white allies, straight allies, people who don't have my background at all, want to know that their travel choices are going to be, represent the world that really exists. And even a future forward world that's being created, not some kind of outdated version of it. So, yeah, so it does play a role.
I spent 25 years in the international advertising business, and I would say that even though I haven't been there for a little while, the industry, the advertising industry, was never particularly adept at diversity, and maybe there's been some improvement. So, what does it take really to bring about change? What is the fear that's blocking the change when you consider the obvious positive impact of actually bringing different voices to the table?
That's a great question. The fears is change, right? People say that they embrace change, but that's often not what's going on emotionally. They embrace change if they don't have to give up anything.
Yeah.
But with diversity, there's a perception that change means losing something, fear of losing power, control, dominance. It's a scarcity mentality based on hundreds, of years of dominant culture and gender. But let's face it, white males have been running the show, right? Not just in the U.S. And change is hard, but change is inevitable. So rather than framing it as things that we're going to lose, it's essential to have what I call this kind of like this courage to collide, because there's upside to what seems scary and messy. There's an understanding that change brings benefits, gains, not losses, and that the more open you are, and the more you open yourself up to change, the more you want to keep expanding.
Yeah, I feel like the way that I have heard you express it is that there's a fear that by bringing new parties into the equation, that somehow it's you have to give up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? I'm going to say that you haven't, that you can't.
Sorry, I'm having some audio.
Oh, all right. I'm going to.
Oh, there you go. You're back.
Okay, fine. I was just saying that I think when we talk about fear, I feel like I've heard you express the idea that the fear is that you bring more people into the equation and somehow it shrinks the pie. Instead, what it is that you're saying is, in fact, bringing new people into the equation actually expands the total pie.
It expands the pie, right? It's not about making it less for one group. It's about being more relevant and expanding the opportunity for other people to participate and to enjoy the benefits of the brand or the company. And so the pie actually doesn't get smaller, it actually gets bigger.
As a communications professional, let me ask you this question, because I can imagine people in the audience, especially those who are in marketing and communication and running businesses. One of the questions that I would ponder is, when we talk about diverse audiences, Black, African American, LGBT, Hispanic, whatever you want to call it, are different or unique campaigns to reach those people required for different audiences, or is there a more kind of uniform way of addressing the total audience? What's your take on that?
So yes and no, right? Required is kind of a loaded word. It's like, taking medicine. We should want to create work for different audiences to be relevant, to be as relevant as possible. What's required is an incredible connection the path to connection comes from in many different forms, right? But yes, one size did not fit all, so that I believe to be truth. I also believe that there are universal truths that do exist. So certainly there's work that appeals to diverse groups at the same time. But even being universal is often a result of being specific and understanding what's unique about that segment, right?
Yeah.
So the answer is, I guess, yes and no to some degree.
You've spoken before about creating kind of a positive creative tension. So let me ask you this: where do you find inspiration? And on that note, tell the people about Bayard Rustin.
Yes, Bayard. Well, okay. So for the first part, I would say that inspiration is all around us. You just have to be receptive to it, to be curious. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm curious. I want to discover things and learn about new things, and then try to come up with unique solutions. Right. I think you have to get out of your comfort zone, and I'm always, to your point about Bayard, I'm always inspired by the words of Bayard Rustin. And for those folks who aren't familiar with Bayard, he's considered the lost prophet of the civil rights movement. He was actually the person who came up with the idea for the March on Washington, which is where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. And one of the things that Bayard said was that what every community needs is a group of angelic troublemakers. Mm-hmm. Right. And that message really inspired me and is kind of the basis in part for what our agency does. We refer to ourselves as enlightened rebels, right? So we've taken the inspiration of Bayard's angelic troublemakers and then kind of incorporated that into how we approach our own agency, how we approach our clients' business, which is, data-driven, looking at insights, but understanding that those insights come from a lot of different groups and really trying to change the status quo, which, as I said earlier, kind of leads to those blind spots and ultimately gives you the level of innovation that you need.
Well, I mean, at minimum, you've given me fodder for the next time I introduce you, because apparently you're a rebel and a troublemaker.
I've been told I'm a troublemaker, hopefully in a good way.
It appears that you are. Now, let me do something here in the time that we have left in a positive way. I mean, obviously, we live in a country at this moment that's very divided in many ways. There's a lot of tension and racial rhetoric and et cetera, and a demand for reform and a lot of discussion around systemic racism. But I want to focus on the positive aspect of that, which is to say that is going to maybe accelerate or amplify in some ways some positive change. So we can look at it in terms of, I can leave it up to you to talk about inclusion or authenticity, but I can also ask you this: when it comes to kind of like the next generation of creative leaders or even leaders in the travel business, how do you see them kind of tackling the challenge of inclusivity?
So that's a great question. So look, I see the next generation of creative business leaders coming from historically marginalized groups, right? And therefore not viewing inclusivity as a challenge, but more of a responsibility, right? A natural way of being. All this lacks, of inclusivity isn't rocket science. It's a choice to exclude people. But the next generation knows that it's a terrible choice. And they're going to make better choices, and we'll all be better for it. I one would hope. One of our mutual friends, Rochelle Newman Carrasco, was a brilliant writer and Hispanic strategist. And I remember her being in a meeting one time, and one of the clients had said, "Well, Rochelle, millennials are colorblind, and so they don't see color. So it's fine to kind of do this kind of total market." And she said, "Well, wait a minute. When is being blind a good thing?" Actually, millennials are color confident. They see color, they understand it, they celebrate it, and they can't understand anyone who doesn't. And so I see that generation, those people looking at this as their responsibility and not as a chore for something that they have to do in the future.
Is there a way to approach marketing and communications that maybe you've answered this, but we have the time. So I mean, is there a way to approach marketing and advertising in a way that that's more inclusive?
If by we you mean gatekeepers, the people holding on to power, which is fundamentally, quite frankly, straight white males and white women after that, you acknowledge the reality that you prioritize inclusivity as a business goal that is real and measurable and requires you to change how you do things. It requires you to kind of learn and listen and to put your faith in the people who know inclusivity better than you do, right? And you understand that inclusivity isn't just about adding people or extending invitations for people to participate. It's giving people leadership, power, budgets, authority, and supporting them in the process. It's not just about checking the boxes. It's about giving them a seat at the table and a voice at the table and the responsibility that comes with it.
By the way, on a completely unrelated note, I mean, it's clear that I'm coming to you from New York City. I don't know if you can hear it, but generally we have police and ambulance sirens in the background.
Yeah, sadly, things are taking a turn for the worse with COVID, but we'll get it.
Let me ask you this: what about you? What is authenticity? You talk a lot about kind of ensuring authenticity, and I understand it in the context of this conversation because anybody can kind of, like you said, fill in boxes. I have this, I have this, I have this, but there's what people are able always, I think consumers are always able to perceive is that it's coming to them in a way that feels, legit, authentic, real. What's your commentary on that?
Well, first, it will be authentic when people engaged are from diverse communities, right? Engaged in leadership positions, not just engaged as consultants. And it will be authentic when people's intentions are adjusted to really care about diverse consumers as people, not just as statistics or as stereotypes or as business opportunities, but as people with cultural histories and names that need to be pronounced properly and heritage stories that need to be relearned and celebrated, not just, 1 month of the year. I tell folks all the time, look, I'm glad you're celebrating Black History. I'm glad you're celebrating, Gay Pride Month, but I'm Black and gay 365 days a year. in June, I talk all the time. Right?
Yeah, that's good. Before we close up, just on kind of more of a personal thing, I got to say that the year leading into the into the kind of lockdown, I had never been to more places in my life. I mean, I was literally in 15 countries, and we come from kind of a travel mentality. We just love the energy of being in another place and really kind of absorbing the local culture. So I'm at the point now where literally, I get a car ride and go to Connecticut, and I'm excited. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what are you on a personal level? What are you like when we can get back and travel? Like, what are you looking forward to most? Is it a vacation thing? Is it a business thing? What are you excited about?
I will tell you honestly, it is about connecting with friends that I haven't been able to see. I have an apartment in New York. I'm in Los Angeles now. And I was thinking the other day, this is the longest in my career. I've been at this now since 1983, right? Mm-hmm. This is the longest in my career. I've never been in New York for any stretch of time. So I'm looking forward to being able to get back to New York. I literally haven't been on a plane, sadly, since March. And I'm like you, I was on the road 80% of the time. I loved it. There was an energy when I was on, when I would travel. I would see the same people at the airport, and they became as much and as close to me as some of my staff, right? I usually travel American and United and an American. Those folks were connected to me in a very special way. So I kind of miss that. I love theater. I love the art, and I can't wait for Broadway to be back up so I can, I can go back and enjoy the amazing artistry that's out there.
Hey, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but just how many frequent flyer miles do you happen to have these days?
Oh my God. Well, I was really nervous because I'm concierge key with American.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the first thing that happened, I was like, oh my God, am I going to lose my status?
It's a real issue.
But I have no idea anymore. I stopped counting. I think career miles, I must be 13, 14.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, enough to mention concierge key, because that's the key right there. And then finally, the courage to collide. It seems to me that if I have a takeaway, basically, it's about that. It's the courage to collide, meaning to embrace diverse perspectives, point of view, people, religion, color, whatever it is. Because whether you look at it from a common sense perspective or the empirical data that that is my timer, the empirical data that you mentioned earlier, it's a win-win. There's no downside to doing this thing the right way. Your closing thoughts, my friend.
I could not agree with you more. I really believe that the courage to collide is how we move things forward, how we get innovation. We have to also acknowledge that we're human beings and that sometimes stepping out of our comfort zone is challenging. But let's acknowledge that it's challenging. Let's face that fear with an understanding that when we do it, when we get to that other side, when we sit and open ourselves up to these incredibly brilliant and supportive people that don't necessarily look like us, but have a point of view and have lived a different life experience, that it is going to be better for everybody. We're going to make the pie bigger, not smaller.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful. I'm encouraged. I see a lot of people reaching out to us now, starting to understand why that's important. It's sad that it took a tragedy sometimes to kind of shake people up, but it did. And so let's use that to kind of learn and to move forward and to do the right things and do the things that are going to help our businesses.
Yeah, as they say, never waste a crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. He's a troublemaker. He is a rebel. He is the one and only Aaron Walton. Thank you, Aaron, for your time and your insights. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Well, Rob, anytime I get to talk to you, it's a pleasure. Thank you. And thank you, Skip.
Come to New York City.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.